This is the beginner's guide to wild camping.
Hello again, welcome back, or if you're new, welcome to the channel. So as I just stated, it's a beginner's guide to wild camping. So this is how I did it, this is how I recommend other people try. This is my view, other people are different, but I think it's a good little guide to get you out on that first camp. Where do you start? For me, I always started with get out on some hikes. Just look for potential locations where you're out and find somewhere that you'd like to camp. Obviously, you want to be looking for areas that are flat, areas that are free of rocks. And once you've found some areas, check online. Make sure you're not in somebody's private land. If you are, seek for the clearance from the landowner. Ask them if they mind you camping. There's plenty of places out there where, as long as you leave no trace, landowners aren't really bothered. At the same scale, there's plenty of landowners out there that don't want us on their land. So if it's private land, always check. Always try and stick. For me, I always look for open moorland or open access land, because as a general rule, you have a bit more freedom. You also want to be avoiding heavily populated areas and areas with paths. As you can see, there's quite a flat area here. It is not a perfect lay, but it would suffice. However, there's a path straight next to us, and as you can see, a road just below. Due to these reasons, this would not be an ideal location to look at. So for me, I'd carry on looking. Once you've found the location that you like, at this point, you need to mark where it is, remember where it is. Apps like 1-3 words are good for this. Take some photos of the surrounding area. If you have anything like a drone, get a bit of drone footage. But just anything you can to remember where you are. If you read maps, maybe mark it on your map. Next stage for me is your gear acquisition. So for this, you need to compile a list of what you need. So I always start with your most important areas and work my way through. So for me, I compile a list every time I go out. So even now, as a more experienced camper, I still do lists. So I'll start with my shelter. So obviously, you need a tent. Following from that, the things that would go in my tent. So my sleep system. So you need a sleep mat, you need a sleeping bag, and either a pillow or some kind of stuff sack to put clothes into. Next up, what I call comfort items. So this would be things like stove, things like that. So obviously you would need a stove and fuel. But no, this isn't needed for your first camp, because you can always get yourself a meal deal, bring some cooked from home that you can have cold. There are other options. A water filtration bottle, or alternatively, a couple of litres of water. Be mindful, if you're bringing water, each litre of water weighs roughly 1 kilogram, so that will weigh you down. For me, where I can, I always bring water with me. I do have a filter, but I'm not massively trusting of this, so I will always try to bring fresh water, but I don't mind carrying extra weight for that. Next up, check your stove. Do you need a way of lighting it? Do you need a lighter? Do you need a ferro rod? Always make sure you've got some. I'd advise bringing this anyway, because even stoves with clickers, the clickers can fail. The stove I've got with me today, the clicker on that doesn't work anymore. That failed while I was out. I didn't have a lighter. Luckily the person was with smokes, so they could lend me one, but if not, it could have been a fairly miserable night for me. Next areas, once you've got your comfort stuff, look at things like, have you got a fork with you, or a spoon, a cup for making a brew? Have you got any tea or coffee that you want? If you're taking milk, I'd suggest either powdered or those little tiny milk things that you can get from hotels. Have you food are you taking? I know we just talked about this, you can pre-prepare it, you can bring in a stove. What are you doing? Are you saving weight? Are you bringing a freeze-dry meal? Or are you bringing something from home? After this, look at your survival stuff. Have you got a headlamp or a torch? Make sure you get one of them. Have you got emergency things, plasters? Have you got a bit of tape if any of your gear rips or your tent rips? Gorilla tape or T-Rex tape will do for this. You can get it. Most people, what I've seen, tie a little bit around the lighter. You've always got it with you. Have you got a pole repair sleeve with you? Nothing worse than you break a pole when you're out. Most tents these days come with a spare one. If not, you can buy them online. I like to go outdoors, Decathlon sell them. They're only a couple of quid. Make sure you've got one. For me, I always bring a spare guy line as well. If you get hit like today, I was expecting no winds today. I did check the weather app, but I've got to where I am and it's very windy. So always make sure you get that guy rope. What if one snaps? What if I need a spare? So I've got that. And with that comes a couple of spare pegs. Make sure you've got adequate clothing with you. So today I've got my waterproof jacket on. I am expecting bits of rain showers, so I've ensured I've got that. And I've got my down on underneath to keep me warm because it's not the warmest of temperatures. I've also got a spare fleece packed in the back of my bag. I've even got spare socks. I think socks for me, that's a necessity to bring. If you get wet feet, you can have a miserable camp. Make sure you bring gloves and a hat. Once again, self-explanatory. Nobody's going to have a good camp if it gets too cold. So, after that, where do we get my gear from? I've got my list, created it. I've prioritised what I want. Where do we go? Where do I spend my money? Where's best to pump my hard-earned cash into? Remember, you're a beginner. So don't spend hundreds of pounds on all your gear because you may go out once and not enjoy it. So, for me, I'd avoid places like Asda, Tesco and other big supermarkets. I'd avoid Amazon, Temu, AliExpress, all of these Chinese shops. I'd go to somewhere like a Go Outdoors or like a Decathlon. Somewhere where if your gear fails, you can take it back, you've got a bit of customer care, and where you can see things set up. I don't think you can beat the OAX sense from Go Outdoors. That's where I'd go if I started again. My first tent when I started camping again was one from Decathlon, and don't get me wrong, it was a good tent, but then I swapped it out for the OEX Raccoon 2, which completely blew it away and was about half the cost. So I'd go outdoors, I'd look at tents. They have a good variety. You've got the Bobcat one. It's a very well loved, very popular tent for a lot of wild campers. It's a one manor. For me, it's very tight. I've borrowed one that my friend's got. I'm not a lover of it. I can see where people do like it, but as you can see, I'm a large person. It's a bit of a squeeze for me. I have got other one-man tents, but it's just a bit on the small side for my liking. You also have the Fox 1 and 2, also very popular tents. Once again, I've created a video on the Fox 1. I'll share the link in the description. It's a love it or hate it tent, that. I describe it as a Marmite tent. There's a really, really devout following of the Fox 1. People absolutely love it. For me, it's very much like a coffin. I struggle to be in there with the door shut and don't find it a pleasant experience to be in for the night. And this is something that when you're first going, you need to be mindful, because if you have a bad experience when you start, you'll never go again. So if it was up to me, I'd put my money into the Raccoon 2 again. It's not quite as sturdy in adverse conditions as you're going to get with the Fox One or the Bobcat, but because it is a bigger footprint and it is slightly heavier. However, the amount of space that you get extra for me totally outweighs both of them, especially when you're just starting out. I'd also avoid, like I said, cheap tents for this. I'd avoid things like the Eurohike ones, anything that's got fiberglass poles. They're all right if you go in festivals or to enclosed campsites, but for wild camping, anywhere like this, as you can see today with the windmills, they're going quite fast, then poles are going to snap. Once again, you're going to have a miserable night. So avoid them at all costs. Also, go outdoors, get your variety of sleeping bags. They range different prices, different sizes. Once again, it's a good place. You can go, you can take off the shelves, you can get inside and see how they feel, work out what's best for you. Some people love a mummy bag. For others, square bag, because it's just that bit more room. I'd avoid anything that doesn't tell you its R value or its limit on it, because you need to know where that's rated to. But additionally, take these ratings with a pinch of salt, because they are user specific and best case scenarios. But for me, if there's no limit on it, I won't buy it. Same with your sleep pads. Once again, you have a vast array of what you can, different shapes, sizes, materials, and always avoid the flock ones and the cheap ones that you get in supermarkets, as they will have practically zero R value and you will be losing most of your temperature from underneath, not from above you. So always ensure you have some degree of R value. In Go Outdoors, you have things like the Flux 5.0. Once again, a mat with a very good following, and once again a mat that I don't really like. But that is again down to personal preference. I would advise go and train them out, line them on the floor when you're in there, see what you like. They also have X-Bed mats in there, Sea to Summit mats, and if you don't want them, my mat of choice is starting out, but I will advise that this is under 2 season. It's a Trekology UL80, and it's one of the few products that I would actually buy from Amazon. Next up, getting the stove. I'd advise looking at an all-in-one stove, something like the OAX Hero or the Jet Boils, but once again, be mindful of cost. The Jet Boils can range upwards of £150 to £160, whereas the Heroes can come in, if you get a deal, between £50 and £60, and they do practically the same thing. The all-in-ones are really good because you don't need any additional pans. The whole setup that you need is there and just with you. And if you buy a small gas canister, that will also store within, which saves you space. Rucksacks, to begin with, I don't think you can beat the Eurohike Nepal. Generally, you can be picked up for £20 to £25. They're 65 litres, so it'll hold all your gear. It's not the comfiest of packs, and it's not the best built, but it will be good enough for what you need. Other things to consider while buying your gear is your weight, because remember you have to carry it up the hill. Don't buy too much stuff, which is why you created your list. You don't need to be taking items you don't need. I know a lot of people take a chair. I have a chair that I take with me, generally when I've got a lighter camp or I'm on a site. If not, I take a sit pad with me. They're more than good enough. You can generally find a rock or something you can perch it on. It'll keep you warm and it keeps you off the ground. They're also very useful for when you put stuff in your tent for being able to kneel on. And also be mindful of cost. Like I said before, camping gear can be very expensive. And if you're only going to go once, you don't want to be forking out £450 on a tent, £250 on an air mat, £300 plus on a sleeping bag, and so on and so forth. Buy what works and what's good. There's plenty of websites out there you can do research on, so you can find out what gear would work for you. But like I said, the best research is trying stuff out. Find your local camping shops, find places like Go Outdoors, Decathlon, go and test the gear. I would avoid too much advice off places like Facebook groups. They can be quite poisonous communities sometimes. I've witnessed a lot of people asking for ideas or rough ideas of places to camp, and they've been torn apart, as well as people asking about gear and getting told to go and do their own research. So they're not always the best places to ask. Places I would ask if you want communities is I would follow people on YouTube, subscribe to them, and ask them. You know, all of us who record videos on YouTube are here to help. We do it because we love it, but ultimately we want to encourage other people. We want to get people out. We want people to enjoy the countryside and enjoy the wild. And if we can give advice to get somebody out there, we'll do it. And most people on YouTube will have something like Instagram, and most of us will be happy to answer any questions or give any advice. But be advised, advice is all opinion based, and what works for me may not work for you. You've now found some locations, and you've found your gear, and you've purchased your gear. So where do we go next? That anxiety is still there. That fear of camping alone in the outdoors is still there. Well, start off in your garden. Test your gear. Make sure you know how to put your tent up. Make sure it works properly and everything's there. Make sure that you feel comfortable in your sleeping bag and on your sleeping mat before you go. Have a couple of times you try it in the garden. May seem weird, it may seem scary because your neighbours will be looking at you, but you're already scared of being out here. So that will also help with them anxieties. Carry on with the list. You found your locations, you bought your gear, tested your gear, but once again you're still scared. You don't want to camp alone, it's frightening. We'll go to a campsite. You're alone but not alone. There's other people there, but you can be as secluded as you want. Some good campsites to experience a bit more of the weather side of it and the noises is places like Garth Campsite in Wales. It's very windy there, just off a lake. It has little areas you can camp on the side of a hill that he's got. It can be as quiet or as busy as you want, depending on what time of year you go. But it's a good little location. And that gives you that bit of a leg up and a bit of an experience of what it's like and how it can be. So try places like that. Just some campsites that are a bit out there. Keep the prices cheap. Anything that's £10 or under a night generally will have less facilities. Try not to use the facilities while you're there. Obviously, if you need the toilet, you can't be digging cat holes on a campsite, so you'd still have to do that. But just do it that way. You know, don't use the showers, don't use the washing up facilities. You know, use water and stuff to wash your stuff. Just try and live that experience. So you've now found your spots, you've bought your gear, you've tested your gear, you've tested yourself, your mind. Where do we go next? Well, this is where we look at apps. So you're at that point now, you're ready to go. You're ready to do that first wild camp. But there's other things to be scared of. So what are all these noises you're going to hear outside your tent? What if the weather turns bad? How do you deal with these things? Well, we've already touched on part of it with the survival kit. Make sure you've got things to repair anything if it goes wrong. With the animal sounds, get on YouTube, listen to what the bark of a fox is like. Listen to what an owl sounds like. Look up what local birds and what local wildlife is going to be in the area. Search their sounds, familiarise yourself with them. Once you know what to expect, it's no longer scary. What if you hear strange noises that you've not heard? Well, take some earplugs, you won't hear them. I know a big one for me when I did my first solo was my beard. It was rubbing along my sleeping bag and it sounded like somebody walking on crinkly grass outside. And I'll admit that was scary. But I put my earplugs in and I thought, well, what's the worst that could happen? You know, somebody could ask me to move on. And then I can politely ask if I can stay and I won't leave any trace, or I can go. But that's the worst that can happen. So don't get too scared about it. When it comes to the weather, how are you going to control what's happening there? Well, in all honesty, you can't. But you can prepare yourself. Check weather apps online. Have a look how much wind there's going to be. Have a look what the rainfall is going to be. See if there's the potential for any cloud inversions. A lot of these mountaineering weather sites will tell you all this stuff. Make sure you know. So what do we do next? Plan your route. You already know it part of the way in your head anyway. You've already been there. You've hiked to these locations. You've found them. So get down and work out where you're going to walk, how you're going to get there. Give somebody your route. You know, if you've got a husband or a wife, or parents, close friends, let them know. Give them a copy of your route. Tell them where your planned camp location is. That way, if anything does happen, and God forbid, somebody has to get out mountain rescue, they know where to go. It's that little bit more safety, and it covers you. As you get more into it, you can buy a GPS. But once again, it's a lot of cost for something if you may not enjoy it. So for that, I'd wait until you've been a few times and you know it's what you want to do. And if people are out looking for campers, they're going to check summits because they're easy to get to. For me, I'd look for a ridge just off the summit or just to the side. You get a bit more shelter from the hill, as well as you're not going to get disturbed. You've got everything planned. You've been out on your hike, you've found some spots, you've got your gear, you've tested your gear, tested your gear again, tested your mind. You've planned your route, you've let somebody know your route. What next? Well, get in that mindset. Know that it's okay to bail. If things don't go right, get too scared, pack up and go. Be mindful not to leave gear up there if you do. Always take it with you. If you leave your gear up on the top of the hill because it's failed, or you've not followed simple rules, or you've got scared, you're ruining it for others. We're in a niche and have a hobby that is very frowned upon. A lot of people don't like that we do what we do. And that's due to people ruining the countryside, and people have that stigma that we all do that. So don't be a melon and take your gear home with you. Also, make sure you've got a backup place to camp. There's nothing worse than if you carted all your gear up a hill and you've got to the top of it or wherever you're going to camp, to a nice spot, to find somebody's already in it and you haven't got anywhere to camp. So always have a backup plan. Have plan B. Know where, if that's failed, you're going to stay. And if plan B fails, be prepared to go home. Or go early enough to find plan C. You're always going to find a spot if you look. On this hike I've been on today so far, I bet I found 20, maybe 30 camping spots. Would I camp where I am today? Possibly not, but mainly, as I said, You look at all the windmills, makes it a lot more populated. There's actually a road runs between all them. It means wherever you camp on this hill, you're going to be very, very close to somebody being able to come up to move you on. So I wouldn't take the risk. But that being said, you know, there is plenty of places you could do. I've come here because it's local and it was easy for me to come and film today. But if I was actually going to be camping out, then there's a lot of spots that I know that I would go, and I've already done my research for them. That goes back to what I said in an earlier point. Do your research, find your spots. Unfortunately, this is the world's best kept secret. Nobody is going to help you with this. This is down to you. Because partially, people don't want to give up their prize spots, and we get that. But additionally, the people don't know who you are. You could be anybody. You could be that landowner that's trying to keep people away from his land. If you're then going and giving away your spots, you're giving away everybody's spots. So for that reason, people don't give them away. So just be mindful of that. So now, you've done everything. Got your spots, got your gear, tested your mind. You've let somebody know where you're going. You've got your route planned. You've got your gear set up. You've tested it out. You can carry the weight. Everything's good to go. But you're still scared. What do you do now? Well, there's no easy answer to this bit. Essentially, it's put on your big boy or big girl pants and just get out and do it. Because you've done everything you can. You know, you set up, you've got your gear, you've tested your mind, you know what to expect. Go and do it. If you're unsure, like I said, set up, be prepared to bail. You didn't like it that first time, go home, come back another day, try another time, see how you feel then. You know, nobody is going to judge you for going home. But if this is something you want to do, like anything else, you've got to get up and do it. And if you don't want to go alone, there's plenty of people out there who'll come with you. Obviously, don't take an army of you up there because you're more likely to get caught. But taking a couple of you up, you know, 2 people, 2 separate tents, slight distances apart, but both close enough that you can communicate, should be totally fine. And then you've got a bit of reassurance and a bit of backup. But once again, be mindful when you then go to do your first wild camp, what is that person actually doing for you? Because if a landowner's going to be moving you on, they're only going to move both of you on. So here's my final thought. I mentioned a lot of things in today's video, and some things will change as you go through your journey. So I mentioned avoiding places like AliExpress with tents. The tent I brought with me today is a tent from AliExpress. But I think utilising stuff like that comes with time. Knowing what to look for in a tent and what's good and what's not comes with time, it comes with practice. And they're at the stages. For me, whether I'd start looking at these things, you need to take into account with tents like that they will need things like seam sealing, which is all extra cost and extra things you have to do. And it's another worry for you of, has the seam sealing worked? Is it going to keep you dry? So this is part of the reason that I'd avoid it to begin with. Also, I mentioned the weather. I did check the weather apps before I came. I was expecting a bit of rain, which is why I've got a waterproof jacket on rather than in my bag. And I'm now on a lower platform. I had to put my camera gear away and I had to get down because I had quite large hailstones up near the tops. You can actually see right over there where I was. So I've come down lower to finish the video where I'm not getting pelted with big, massive hailstones. And that being said, I mentioned about bailing if you need to, or if you don't feel comfortable. And I'm not camping tonight, but if I was, I'd probably consider bailing. The winds, even this low down, have picked up quite a lot. They're about 10 mile an hour faster, I'd say, than they were when I went up. I got to the point that I was down on the fells, and it was a lot windier there than it wasn't when I was on the summit. So, based off stuff like that, I'd probably have avoided today. I'm not 100% confident with the tent that I've got at the minute. I've not used it in a wild camping scenario, and for me this wouldn't be the time to be testing it. I hope you found this video informative. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been beneficial to you. And if there's been any of them things, please consider subscribing. Please consider dropping a like. It really does help us small channels, as well as the bigger channels as well. It takes 2 seconds for you to do that, and it really does help. If you want to look at any of my previous videos, please have a look. I do have some, I will link to in the description that are relevant to this one. But I have quite a lot around your hiking gear, your camping gear, some budget stuff, some not. Obviously, if you decide that you do want to shop at places like AliExpress, there is some bits like that and some bits off Amazon that I have on the channel. I'll give a very honest opinion on them. But all in all, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'm out of here.